In this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
Hey, I'm Jen.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to WoT the Adaptation. We're the YouTube channel that we review adaptations from one form to another. We're continuing with Rings of Power this week, but first we have a returning guest. Raj, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you for coming in. Tell us about yourself for those who don't know who you are.
All right, hi, I'm Rajesh. You may have seen me on Twitter as Morden and handle Morden1024, and also mod on the Dusty Whale, and you may have seen me there. So
You're mod on a couple of channels, aren't you?
Yeah.
King of the chat, king of the mods.
King of the chat. Thank you.
Yes, you've been king of the chat for what, 2 years now?
Something like that,
So,
I think.
we are continuing the Rings of Power with the episode 104, The Great Wave, written by Stephanie Folsom, J.D. Payne, and Patrick McKay, who I believe is one of the showrunners. Directed by Wayne Chi Yip, who also happened to direct episodes 3 and 4 of The Wheel of Time. It was a place of safety and The Dragon Reborn. He's doing a lot for Amazon.
Yes.
It originally aired just recently, September 16th, 2022. What did you kids think of this episode?
I actually am very excited more for subsequent future episodes. It's got me riveted once more into different stories going on other than Galadriel. I enjoy the shift away from Galadriel and into more of, again, what Elrond is doing and the dwarves are doing, as well as a revisit to the Southlands. A lot of things happen in this episode, as well as a conclusion to what's going on in Numenor for the time being anyway. So I really enjoyed this episode a lot, very much.
Lori?
Yeah, it was a really fun episode. I think we finally gotten past the setup in the first 3 episodes or so, and you're seeing now that things are starting to pick up momentum, and we're going to really start, I think, rolling into the end game with only 4 episodes left. Considering this was the midpoint, we got pretty fun sort of midpoint capper at the end of this episode, and I think things are really going to roll. So I'm really looking forward to what's coming up.
It's the midpoint for the season, but it's only about 10% way through for the entire series. Supposed to be 5 seasons. So
I think so. I
40
think based on the timeline,
episodes.
sounds about right.
I really like this episode. It was busy. It was the most busy episode we've had yet on this show. Still not as busy as a certain other fantasy show airing weekly, but that's for another day. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I think I have a new favorite elf. I mean, it used to be the obvious Legolas, but Arondir is a bit of a badass, and I kind of like him, and I'm rooting for him and Bronwyn.
Me too.
I am.
Yep.
Me too.
And I kind of almost buy into this theory I've seen online that Theo is actually Arondir's kid. The reason why he's got that haircut always covering his ears, you never see the tops of his ears.
Does he have elf ears?
And his skin color is somewhere between Bronwyn and Arondir's. So that could be explained if he was the father. I'm not saying it's a fact, but I saw that somewhere last week, and I'm like, that's interesting.
Potentially, yeah. Okay, I can see that.
I've heard that theory too. It's interesting.
For sure.
So we normally would talk about changes from the source material. It's not that there's no source material. It's pretty sparse and spread out between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Because it's not just the appendices, it's what is sung in songs, given in exposition, offhand comments. So unless somebody indexed it really, really well, and I'm talking better than the wikis, it's almost impossible to really judge on changes.
Agreed.
That given that, were there any sort of changes from what you know or recall from the original source that stood out to you at all? Anybody?
Nothing that was how we haven't already discussed in subsequent and previous
Episodes?
yeah, exactly, because I know we were talking about the fact that they're shrinking down the timeline. I know that we have discussed that kind of at length, and the fact that Isildur is there, you know, right now, and technically that's not like where it's supposed to be, even though from legend, but
See,
we already
I'm
kind
not
of
entirely sold on the fact that this Elendil and this Isildur are the same Elendil and Isildur because
Mhm.
I
Aragorn
see.
that we know as Strider, he's
Mhm.
Aragorn, son of Arathorn.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to get technical, he's Aragorn the second, son of Arathorn the second. There was a previous father-son, Arathorn, and then Aragorn, hundreds or thousands of years before. So if one branch of Numenorians do it, and there's a lot of other names that you'll see repeated, Tolkien does repeat, not as much as Martin does, but it's quite possible this is just another Elendil and Isildur, and I think they've mentioned a second son, Anarion, but that could also just be a name that's been repeated.
Interesting.
I mean, it's likely that they are the same, but I can't quite get on board with it yet. I still see room for doubt. So until I hear something to confirm it one way or another, I'm going to leave it up in the air.
That makes
interesting
sense.
theory.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm starting to hear some rumblings of people speculating on the timelines. I think wondering if we're really looking at the same timeline. I've seen that kind of theory being picked up, and I think it's interesting of knowing a little bit about the Second Age timeline. It does seem like we're looking at either timelines are compressed, which is probably what's happening, or we're looking at like they're trying to shock us with some like time funny shenanigans of where things are, and maybe we're going to get like a Witcher season 1 type of thing, or some other thing where it's like things are happening not in parallel. So
That'd be interesting.
So far, the only storyline that hasn't interconnected with any of the others is the Stranger and the Harfoots. So that could be at a different time. But actually, we saw timing with it when the Falling Star came down in episode 1. So we've got that syncing them all up. So the storylines we've seen can't be out of time with each other yet. But I do remember before this show premiered, Amazon or one of the articles I'd read about it did mention that there was going to be compression of time. You know, I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I still don't think that necessarily means these are the same Elendil and Isildur. So, does anybody have issue with Durin the Fourth being the actual son of Durin the Third?
I remember there was talk about that.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. And I think it's one of the silliest complaints I've heard. Sorry if you don't like what I just said. Somebody leave me a comment. I mean, the books say the dwarves believed that each Durin was the reincarnation of the previous Durin. And that's 5,000 years later. Well, are we going to take the word of what somebody believed in our world 5,000 years ago, or about today, about what happened 5,000 years ago, without any solid evidence, you know, especially like something like a reincarnation? I don't think so. So, I mean, it just doesn't. I don't see why it would matter, you know. Just because the dwarves believe it doesn't mean it's true.
It's true.
There is one thing I'm confused about. You remember at the end of episode 1 when they were taking the elves' armor off? They had that really fine chainmail shirts that they all were wearing. They looked really finer of rings of metal than what Frodo and Bilbo had. And I thought it was mithril when they took it off the first time. But obviously it's not.
No.
And so
It's
I do
interesting.
have.
I'd have to rewatch that and see if that was.
Yeah,
If
I
that's
don't.
mithril, then that could give some evidence to some weird time shenanigans.
Yeah, and so there's nothing really, any changes that we really need to talk about. So, let's just skip that whole section of notes because there's nothing there. What do you think of the continued scenery, props, and costumes and stuff like that?
I liked it even more this episode, especially in the dream sequence you have where they're using the Palantir and the scenery of just I mean the water rushing in and like overtaking the Numenor falling. That was beautiful. To me, I think it was just the orcs looked even, maybe it was just me, but the orcs looked even a little bit like better. Like I like how they looked a little bit more
Ranth was pretty cool.
yes,
The one who caught, yes.
very
Was good.
he was great. The dirtiness felt a little bit more real, like when you got back into the Southlands and they were clamoring for food and the people that like you could really feel not only just obviously by the actors but also the environment, how like everyone was just trying to like scrounge for food and stuff like that. Like all of the scenery in there was really good to me. I enjoyed it a lot. My previous complaint was that it had looked a little bit like too clean on some of the sets, like everything looked really polished, but I didn't have any of that this episode whatsoever. It looked, I felt like I was in the environment of all the shots I was in.
I really enjoy all the visual aspects of Numenor. I mean, the architecture, it's not as garishly painted as we painted architecture in the ancient world on Earth, but it is still painted to some extent, which I liked. I love the costumes there.
Yeah,
it gives me. I mean, it might have to do with the fact that I know Numenor is Tolkien's version of Atlantis. I mean, but I look at them and they look like what my brain would think of as Atlanteans. And that's probably colored with all the movies and TV shows and cartoons I've watched where they go to Atlantis and they're dressed, certain ways. Very Greco, not so much Roman, but very more Greco style.
Yeah.
It's definitely
even
Greece influence.
Even a bit of later Greco stuff like the Byzantine, artwork and and stuff. I get a very serious Byzantine vibe from Numenor. Which makes sense when you look at a lot of the names that they start using at this time, because it used to be Tar Palantir, Muriel would have been Tar Muriel, and then next we get spoilers, but it's in the books. You get Ar Pharazôn. They drop the T instead of being Tar, it's now Ar, and it's a different version of the language. And the names of the Numenorian kings get very, Eastern. Roman Empire, Byzantine, Greece, all like that. It's really cool names in there.
It's the same Ar Pharazôn that we've been introduced to, right?
Yes. He's not Ar Pharazôn yet. He's just Pharazôn.
Yeah.
And he looks evil. I'm sorry. That guy just...
I love the actor.
That hair and that beard, man.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that hair and beard is his. Because that's some intent.
I love all the costumes in Numenor, like especially Muriel's costume with the interlocking discs and everything. It's fantastic.
Like the scale metal, the scale plate up here. She's.
I like the Queen's hairpiece. It looks really cool.
Yes,
it's very pretty.
Yes.
Very pretty.
And I still like, I really like the way that the Southlanders. Their costumes and everything are very, very primitive because they're a broken people, and it really works. All of it so far. The production is the last thing that I would ever complain about on this show, aside from a couple of CG shots or shots that involve CG. Like there was a shot or two looking down from the bow of the boat, the ship. As they're all working, and you could tell everything outside a certain border, the boat was matte painting and CG, and the only thing that was actually there was what's happening inside on the deck. And I'm just like, that shot doesn't work.
I think the production's been really great. Like it's harder, like a lot of shows you can see the seams between like the CG and what you're looking at, and I think on this show it's a lot
Very little
harder
of
to
that.
find the seams.
That's like the only time I've really had it noticeable to me yet, was when I was looking at them on the ship, and I was just like,
Mhm.
that doesn't look matched up just right. And I don't know if I would notice if I hadn't been playing with editing and trying to line stuff up so much, doing graphics. But it's something I noticed this time.
And I think all the
really-
practical effects are so good that it's, I found it jarring when they cut to like CG. So it's like when
Yeah.
you see it, like the practical effects and the orcs are just so good. And then you get like the CG war gets a little, and not that
Yeah.
it's bad, but it's just, it's a jarring because it's such a
This is-
juxtaposition with the craft of the practical orcs.
Mhm.
One of my favorite effects was the Palantir. When she started using it, crack, 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 and it
Yeah,
just opened up to the vision. I was just like, that's cool.
it was cool.
I've seen another movie or show where something somebody touched started out doing the same thing the Palantir did, and I can't think of what it was. I just remember a very similar effect where it starts to crack, and then it cracks more, and then it's like spikes all over the place, shards of crystal, and it's just like, but it seemed a little cool, but it's still a really cool way to break to the vision.
Mhm.
So, speaking of vision, I will start with scene or sequence you most remember, enjoy, and or hate. You can do any of the three, one of them, doesn't matter. I'll start. First, I really love the Palantir scene, not just because of the effects. It was just, when you couple it with my other favorite moments, which is the opening sequence when she's having a dream and
Mhm.
Numenor gets devastated. Those two together just worked so well. And then
Mhm.
that scene at the end, after she sends Gladriel off and her fires and walk the back of the palace, petals start falling.
Mhm. Yeah,
And that was just,
so good with the music and everything.
yeah.
Mhm.
There's one other, there was a transition in music. I wasn't super happy with the slow-mo going for as long as it did with Arondir, Theo, and Bronwyn.
Yeah.
But that music from Bear McCreary,
Mhm.
which was so eerily similar to a lot of the vocal tracks you get on Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
And then it transitioned in from the scene of them escaping to suddenly Disa singing. And it
Mhm.
was, I went back and I wasn't able to spot where I'm like, oh, that's nice, because it goes from that one set of vocals to her. And I'd love to know if she's actually singing that. It sounds like it's her voice,
Mhm.
but that's my other favorite moment, is the rest of that where she's
I
doing
think
that
she was actually
lamentation.
credited on that track.
Oh,
Okay,
From
good.
what I saw on Twitter, that I think the actress name
Good.
is Sophie, I think, and I
wow.
think she was.
I've got her
credited
name
on that.
right here. Her name
She's-
is Sophie Novetti.
Yeah,
She
Sophia
sounded
Novetti.
amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
I thought
what a
it sounded like her.
powerful voice. What, like, she should really consider like just making some extra money on the side if she ever wanted to like sing a very powerful song.
She might have a
She's
lot of
very
singing
moving.
background for all we know.
Yeah.
That was a powerful scene, especially if you
Yeah.
go back and watch that. One of the earliest shots of Elrond in that scene, he's got tears in his eyes.
Mm.
Elrond was moved to tears, and that got me. I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just, Raj, what's your favorite scenes, or least favorite scenes, or most memorable scenes?
I think my favorite scenes are still in Khazad-dum with the dwarves. They're my favorite storyline right now. Everything with
Khazad!
Elrond
Come on,
and
Khazad!
Dune.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
everything with Elrond and Durin and Tisa is fantastic.
Agreed.
That Tisa's, their singing scene was great. I also love just the kind of heartwarming scene of Doran and his father after sort of Elrond tells him like to not waste your time and, you know, talk to your father and stuff. That was all really great stuff in this episode.
The beginning of that scene worried me because his dad was so stone still. I thought he walked in on his dad, you know, and I'm like, oh no. And when he gets around, even still when they go to the front, you know, I can't tell if his eyes are open and he's just not moving a bit. He doesn't even look like he's breathing. I'm like, I mean, I know dwarves love stone, but do they turn into stone? I thought that was trolls.
Yeah.
It is trolls. So, Jen, how about you?
I really want to just I believe I agree with Rajesh. Like I absolutely love the fact of and everything going on with the dwarves. Chris, my partner, he's like Tisa's my favorite character. I think she's great. But also that, and I know that we talked about it already, but Bronwyn and Theo and them running, I kind of did like it when they came out of the forest because it was both, because my heart stopped because I'm like, if they don't try to shoot them with their arrows, yes, they can't come out into the light, but there is a moment there before they started firing with their arrows, which they did do, but I was like, they're just going to stop at the thing, and are they not going to at least try to shoot them even if they can't go out to them? And they finally did. I'm like, okay. And I like the sun glinting off the sword and the sun rising, and it actually looked like, I don't know how much CG was using that shot as far as the sun on the grass and everything, but it looks like it could have been real. And I really like the sun rising and then running and then getting out and the shots being fired at them and they just escaped. I really enjoyed that very much. I like that. It gave me a sense of like less like hope fleeing certain death, and I really gave the tension was set for that scene for me. I enjoyed it very much. Yeah,
I'm actually becoming quite invested in that storyline. Where that's going with those three in particular, and now old Waldring, you know, the Sauron lover.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great scene, and I thought it was really interesting how like this episode was directed by Wayne Yip, and so was Wheel of Time episode 4, and he directed like 2 sort of forest battles in the 4th episode of both series. Was very interesting to look at the parallels and the differences in the two.
I felt the same flavor. I felt it.
Yeah. I don't really have any complaints about the directing, unless it was the director's choice and not the editor's choice for that 10-minute long slow motion sequence of them running through the forest, because that's what it felt like when it was going for that long in slow mo. That's about my only complaint when it comes to, I really can't think of another complaint as to, you know, the actual directing and or editing. I really should start including the cinematographer, whose name is right there, and the episodes too. So that's definitely one strong point this show has. If the Emmys have a cinematography award, the cinematographers from this will probably be nominated. So, let me see. We discussed scenes we hated and enjoyed. A couple of things on here. When Galadriel is about to touch the Palantir, you know, she says, I have touched Palantir. She's given a warning, says, I've touched Palantir before. Muriel responds, you have not touched this one. And just the way she said it makes me think back to Elrond and Galadriel talking. You haven't seen what I've seen. I've seen my fair share of things. You haven't seen what I have seen. And just to have somebody throw that, not word for word, but she's saying the same thing right back at Galadriel. I was like, yes.
Yeah. And I think the other Galadriel scene I thought was pretty fun, or was in the beginning when she's challenging Muriel to like, you know, she's petitioning for support, right? And then it's like, and Muriel's walking away, and then she starts going like, there's a tempest in me, and I will not be safe. And then it's like cut to her being thrown in the prison cell.
Mm-hmm.
Nice bars on this cell. I mean, is that gold plated or is that just bronze? It looks almost gold with bars. It's bronze though, I'm sure. They have a lot of bronze armor, I've noticed.
It's bronze
Which-
working at the time. If there were like, it reminds me of like you said, like the old school, like maybe Phoenician or something like that, like bronze work,
Right.
heavy bronze work.
But we've seen them with steel too, so.
Mm-hmm.
So, who would you say is your best or favorite performance, and then your worst or least favorite performance for the episode? Or just plain worst casting or best casting? So with you, Rajesh.
I mean, best casting is tough. I think they're all doing really well, and so it's hard to say best or worst. I mean, it would really come down to likability at this point. But I mean, best is probably Disa or the dwarves like Durin. They're just so, I think they're just so, they're lovable, and it's really, you really can, kind of know where that story's going also. So it's also sad. So it's like, you love the dwarves, but you're also like, oh no, I know where this is going.
The dwarves are great.
Yeah, but I don't have any sort of worst performance, I think.
But for best, you'd say Sophia Namvetti.
Yeah,
as
probably.
Princess Dia. Anybody else that you got, like one or two more that you might play?
The guy that's playing Adar,
Shut
the evil elf.
Yeah,
I like
Benjamin
him
Stark,
as well.
who's doing Adar, is great.
Mhm.
And I like Hallbrand.
Joseph
I think Hallbrand
Moss.
is playing his character. I like what Hallbrand is doing, playing that sort of
Yeah.
roguish character.
What do you guys think of this theory that he's Mordin? I mean, Sauron.
I don't.
Hallbrand is Sauron.
I mean, it's a possibility, but it's just not stoking my fire.
Yeah.
Is it a possibility? Absolutely. Do I see it? Yes. Is it what I personally am gunning for? No. So, but there's a lot of talk about that online. I've seen. Absolutely.
Yeah, I could buy it. I'm not sold yet.
Mhm.
There's a character that we've seen in trailers from upcoming episodes, and they're like really, really pale albino. I think they were bald, and they were this really eerie but yet ethereal and beautiful being that I thought might fit for how Sauron might show up. And, you've seen the one in the have you seen the character in the trailers? Yeah, it's just you only see them
Is it
for a
with
brief
like
moment.
a cloak and like a
Yeah,
staff or something?
I think they were wearing a white cloak or something.
Yeah. I don't. That's we still haven't seen that character, but that's very
I've
interesting.
just kind of assumed that was going to be Sauron.
Yeah.
But this idea that he's Sauron doesn't fail.
It doesn't fail.
No, it's
I like
feasible.
the theory that he might be the Witch King and Mar or something.
Ah, yes. Yeah, that was the way somebody I was watching said the other day. You're watching a human character, dead, wraith, dead, wraith, ring wraith, dead, trying to figure out who lives and becomes a ring wraith.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could totally buy him being one of the ring wraiths.
Mhm.
I don't see him being a sorcerer yet, but who knows? He might end up being a sorcerer. Because the Witch King was, obviously, sorcerer.
Mhm.
Jen, did you have any particulars? I know you said a couple there when Raj was going with who's.
Other than Adar and other than Disa, those are probably my two favorites right now. So I'm gonna probably stick with that. I don't have any that like least favorite yet. I'm probably gonna put the Warg CGI. I didn't really care for that as much, but like that's probably it.
That's valid.
It's not like a person, but
the three that I want to spotlight. First, Robert Aramayo as Elrond is just. I like this Elrond. I don't know if I really ever liked Hugo Weaving's Elrond. Hugo Weaving's Elrond was kind of a dickhead.
Yeah.
This
I liked it,
Elrond
though.
is nice and friendly and warm and compassionate. I don't know what the happened.
He's got a story arc, doesn't he?
Did his kids grow up and become little shits or something
Oh my
in
God.
their middle ages? You know, when they were 200-300 years old. You know, I don't know. But yeah, I really like Aramayo's album. The dwarves are probably one of the best things about this show.
I agree.
So I got to give props both to Owen Arthur as Durin the Fourth. He's just, I like Durin. I like that guy. I can see why him and Elrond are friends.
Yeah.
I've had friends a lot like this guy, this character. And then Sophia Namvede, I'm hoping I pronounced that right. She's just great as Princess Disa. Can't wait till she's Queen Disa. And she'll be like in charge. Yeah. I really like her. And I love the character. The character is just so much fun. The only other characters I think that are this much fun for me are Arondir and Nori. I just really like watching those three. All right, so now we're on to the meat of the discussion, as I like to say just about every time. The themes. Not so much on the books, because, well, I mean, there's some there. Let's mostly focus on the themes of the episode that stood out, and where were the themes represented? Jen, let's start with you. Give us a couple.
I mean, there's a lot, but it's mostly I think trust is coming to the forefront before more than the subsequent episodes, because you had the looming threat of good versus evil and that sort of thing, but it's more the trust that Disa and Elrond and Doran have amongst themselves, and with how that group bond works, and also you know, the Queen Regent had to really trust and put her faith in Galadriel, didn't she? Like in her visions and stuff, even when she maybe didn't agree with exactly what Galadriel was trying to do at the beginning. So there's trust between elf and man, and then trust between dwarves and elves as well, that you really find as a key element between both things going on there. So I would say trust more than previous episodes for me.
Trust is one I missed. But yeah, once you said it, I saw it there.
Yeah.
You got any others?
I agree with the trust one. I think you see, I think on rewatching it, you notice, I think it's Celebrimbor is like, he's talking with Elrond, he kind of hints at, he basically tells Elrond there's something happening in the, in Moria and in Khazad-dum, and go figure out what it is. And then you see kind of a mirror of that scene later when Doran is speaking with Father Doran, and he's also like, do you think everything is kind of okay? And he's like, no, he's like, no, I sense there's something else going on. And he's like, and he says, good, you should trust your instincts. And then he sends him back to, go find out what's going on with the elves. So you got this, like, they're working together, but they're both on they both don't really trust each other, or are trying to figure out what their secrets are.
Looking at my notes, I do kind of have trust down there, because I'll get to it later, but I have blank and distrust is a line that I wrote that's the theme that's in there. But we'll get to what that blank is when I do. Did either of you have any others?
Not more, just the over, like, just like an overlooming like threat that is just, that's just getting more pervasive each episode. But that's not, it's just kind of a overarching, like, ethereal kind of theme. There's that's just kind of there.
The good versus evil. Yeah, that's the big one I have, but that's inherent in everything Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a gimme.
Yeah. Yes.
When the golf ball's sitting on the edge of the cup and you could just blow it in, that's a gimme. This is a gimme.
Yeah, it's like very much a gimme. Yes.
Before I start,
I was gonna say, I think there's also some themes of, I think, corruption coming up more and more. I think we're seeing that in Numenor. You're seeing, I don't know if they're being corrupted or like being tainted by maybe Sauron or something, but you see the kind of unrest that's going on in Numenor, and the kind of like how they're really up in arms and worried about elves coming over and
coming to take our jobs.
Exactly.
That's kind of familiar sounding right there.
It's close to home, right? It's very it's very thin allegory.
The thinly veiled. That was I mean, that was stolen straight out of the headlines, of today. I got a bunch, and we can talk about them as we go. One of the first ones I spotted was humility. And it was both Durans towards each other. They were both admitting they were wrong. Disa apologized to Elrond for her deception. So that was some humility. No real humility from anybody else this episode. They're all too proud. Spending time with your loved ones while you still have them, specifically fathers and sons speech from Elrond. And then Durin and Durin together. That really stood out. I already mentioned the good versus evil. And the one this comes up in just about every show we reviewed so far on this channel, and that's racism. We had shit tons of racism in The Witcher, shit tons of racism in The Expanse. Wasn't so much racism in The Wheel of Time, that's just not its nature, but it has its similarities, with like the white cloaks towards anybody who might be able to stand them. So and Dune had racism against the Fremen. So, racism seemed to pervade a lot of the science fiction and fantasy from the last couple of decades, and I never noticed how much so. You guys talked about the corruption on Numenor. The way I looked at it was, pedagogy and catering to the populace and feeding the populace bullshit propaganda to get them scared of things that aren't going to happen. You're going to take your sword. I mean, they're going to take your jobs. So don't trust them. That really stood out.
And then we have like literal corruption in the Southlands with it. It's literally transforming into where we know it's going to go. And works, that's always been said, works are corrupted elves, twisted and corrupted elves. There's also quite a bit of conspiring and plotting going on with because Farazan's speech, right after Tammin, I think his name is Tamar or Tamrin, the guy who Halbrand beat up. The two of them have been together since we first got to Numenor. I think one of the very first shots of Farazan, him and Tammin are standing there talking to each other. They're both in that court, right in that first episode 3.
So it's pretty obvious that he's up to some bullshit, conniving and plotting, and because he had those drinks ready. Those women were there with those plates of drinks. As soon as he got done speaking, that's a little too convenient unless you had them there, ahead of time. Here's a weird one, especially considering when I saw it. Mercy. Do you know what I'm talking about? When Adar eased the passing of that orc, he held its head and its face gently, like he actually cared about it. They do call him Lord
the
Father.
Yeah. So that wasn't a brutal killing. That was a mercy killing.
It wasn't the Trolloc on Trolloc violence in episode 3 of Wheel of Time.
It's just Okay. This is not where I expected to see compassion and mercy being shown to one another.
Yeah.
And even the other orcs seemed to be paying respects. I didn't get an exact translation, but one of the lines was supposed to be some, respectful, they pass on easily or something like that. The guy who was taking the orc that took his armor.
Mhm.
So that really puzzled me at first.
I think it's meant to. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
And then there's the desire and intent for apotheosis. That's how I wrote it down. To become a god. Adar literally hinted at the fact that he's planning on becoming a god.
Yeah. He said not yet.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
Isildur wants to do something that would make him a god because he would get eternal life, and he wants to go west. Farazan, spoiler for the appendices of the Lord of the Rings, he ends up leading all of Numenor and most of Numenor west, and it doesn't end good for Numenor. And so they're planning on doing this. So, trying to become godlike, it is a theme with two different people, with the people that are absolutely evil, and then people who are supposed to be good but have been sliding to evil. Trust, you talked about earlier. I wrote deception because I found a lot of deception.
Yeah.
Dwarves are deceiving Elrond and Celebrimbor both. Celebrimbor is deceiving Elrond and the dwarves because he's not telling them what he's building this for, which I'm assuming is to have something to do with making the three Elven rings.
Yeah.
So Sauron better get his ass there soon.
Not a lot of time.
Yeah. Adar is deceiving Arondir while claiming that Arondir's leaders had deceived the young elf soldier. And he says, you've been told so many lies. Well, some of them might be lies, but I'm sure most of what you're saying are lies are true. So you're lying, you're deceiving. But, maybe the elder elves are deceiving too. We don't know. I wouldn't put it past them. Elves are snotty that way. Elves can be shifty.
Yes.
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 I think we've seen that.
Mhm.
And they
Almost
did
as
that
shifty as
storytelling thing with in that scene with Adar, where like Arondir's asking some interesting questions, but they kept coming up with interruptions, so they didn't have to answer.
Right, and changing the topic.
Yeah.
There was also Theo's deception by dunking under the water. And I'd say that counts, when he hid from the orc. There's a hidden dwarf door in the old mine. That was some real good deception there, because I rewound it, watched it crack, white rewound it, watched it crack. I can't see shit there. They CG'd the hell out of that seam, so you can't tell the seams there.
No.
That was just, it looks good. Tamar, not Tammin, Tamar is the name of the guy that Halbrand beat up. Him and Farazan deceived the crowd with their bullshit, wicked propaganda, feeding on fears and jealousy of living forever. And Isildur letting go of the rope was deception.
Yeah.
Did you guys think of any other deceptions in this episode?
Obviously the Theo holding on to that that branding and
The hilt.
and then that old guy coming and then showing him, I know exactly what you talk about, boy, and trying to keep it a secret. He's like, you rest now, blah blah blah. Like it was that was all just deception. It was all
I liked how the old guy came in and says,
Hello, ma'am. Do you have a minute to talk about our Lord and Savior?
Sauron the Dark Lord.
Sauron.
Yeah, he's definitely hiding stuff from the rest of the Southlanders there.
oh yeah, a very wicked secret. Belief and faith. Let's get away from deception. Belief and faith. Tied in with the Numenorians, because I think it was Galadriel says, I beg of Muriel, choose not the path of fear, but that of faith. And she responds, faith may bind one heart, but it is too fine a thread from which to hang a kingdom. So that I think was Muriel saying, "Yeah, I like my dad. I'm an elf lover. I still have faith with, because she did talk about later, the faithful believe that when the petals of the white tree fall, it's the Valar saying, no, no, that's the tears of the gods, basically." And seeing that happen at the end of the episode changed her mind. So I think it's pretty clear she's still faithful. She's just playing for the crowd, to keep her head and to keep her daddy's head. And
Agreed.
the last one that I made notes about is friendship. Durin, Numenor in the past used to have a friendship with the Eldar and the Valar, and there seems to be maybe a budding friendship between Galadriel and Halbrand.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say a romance, but a friendship. For now, it could go bad. There's certain theories of
friendship, and there's definitely been hints of little more, but not a lot.
Yeah. The steamy little more I hope comes from Bronwyn and Arondir, because them's the two best looking people on the show. So, but yeah, he's my favorite elf. He is just, and I can't remember the actor's name. Ismail
Cordova or something.
Is it Cordova? Okay.
Something like that. I just know Ismail for sure.
Yeah.
Call
I
me Ismail.
Yeah. I've loved some of the moves, when he was fighting at that chain last week.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to see Legolas try to do any of that shit. No. Legolas could try, but I don't think Legolas would be as nearly as good at it as Arondir did. Arondir badass.
Yeah, we got a little bit of Galadriel in this episode too, doing some when she pushed all those guards into the south and stuff.
Yeah.
We
didn't see most of
it, but then then they cut to the other Farazan and Halbrand, so you couldn't see half of
most of the action. We saw her knock the guy's arms up, spin him around, and then it cuts to Farazan and Halbrand, and then it cuts back and she's shoving the guys into the cell. Okay, somebody didn't have a choreographer that day. Come on, Wayne. Yep, you're good at action scenes. I thought that's one of the things people love about you. But it was a little funny. But it's still funny that she did that to him. That she's that good. I'm not surprised because look how old she is. She's thousands of years old already at this point. Anybody else got any other thoughts or stuff they wanted to bring up about this episode?
I'm kind of curious where you think this season is going. Now that we're at the halfway point, where do you think this season is going to end?
Good question. I keep forgetting that we want to add predicting to the list. We're going to see them go to the Southlands, the Numenorians. We're going to see them land on the coast of Middle Earth. But I think they might get resistance from, the peasants that live there, or people who live there at first, but I don't think they're going to face any orcs until the season finale, or maybe not until next season. The Numenorians, that is. Depends on how fast they can get to the Southlands and to someplace like Osteroth. I think that's the tower that they all hold up at. When you call it Osteroth, I think that's what you mean. Osterith. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, feels like we got to end this season with kind of it becoming Mordor, or the beginning of building of Barad-dûr, right? I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Or maybe Aradruin instead of Orodruin. I always said Orodruin, and she called it Aradruin. Maybe Aradruin erupts.
Yeah.
That because Mount Doom is a volcano. And
yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that in a couple of shots. So.
Yeah, that's something that could definitely aid in turning the Southlands into the desolated waste of Mordor. But yeah, I don't know.
I think it's gonna
What do you think
end
is gonna happen?
the end of the forging of maybe the Elven rings, or like starting the forging of is I think that's probably gonna be the end of it. I think potentially, yeah.
I think
This-
that's gonna be like the other thing that I think should happen this
Mhm.
season.
mhm.
Maybe I'm thinking
the tower get built at least.
Yeah, the tower will be done. I think when it on that storyline, I think we'll get the revelation of what Celebrimbor has in him.
Mm.
And I don't know whose idea it was to craft 7 for the dwarves and 9 for the men.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was Sauron, he just took control of it all, or if those were decided, but I think Celebrimbor is probably going to make the announcement to everybody, this is what we're doing, join in, let's have some fun.
Mhm.
And he might actually, Durin might actually release Elrond from his oath, because the doors might actually reveal the existence of Mithril to at least Celebrimbor, because I think they might have used Mithril in the rings. I'm not sure. I would wager
so,
that.
right?
I think so. I would wager at least the dwarf rings are made of Mithril.
I
But
thought the
I don't
Elven
know.
rings might have been Mithril.
I will put over here in this little blank space, I will put some text telling you what I found about the rings and their makeup, if
Oh.
anything.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do research and add text graphic to it.
Yeah. See it. You do a very good job. Yes,
I
that's
have
great.
fun with it.
it was good.
So, anything else, you guys?
Not that I'm aware of.
So, next week we will be doing episode 105. So, thank you, Raj, for joining us and filling in
Thank you for having me. It
Max.
was fun.
Max has been infected by children, and Rebecca is recovering from being infected by children.
Here's
Yeah,
to a
the
speedy
dr-
recovery.
Yes, they both, I guess, had pretty bad colds. Started cold or ended cold. So,
School
I
just
hope you
started a
guys-
couple weeks ago, so that makes sense.
yeah. So, I hope those guys are back feeling better this coming week.
Mhm.
And I appreciate you filling in. Jen, thank you again for being here. Still loving the fact that we talked you into joining the team.
I'm enjoying
It
it. I
actually,
love it.
it cost us a lot of money to get here, you guys.
Well,
You know?
I want to make
Yeah,
sure you get your
it's
money's
hard.
worth.
So,
Thank you.
thank you guys for watching. Hope you come back next week as we continue Rings of Power. I'll tell you now, soon we've got the Sandman coming. Don't have an exact date on that yet, but that's forthcoming from the channel. Thank you all for being here. Don't forget to leave a like, a subscribe, ring that bell when you subscribe, and leave us some comments. Chew me out for the things you don't like me saying. Come on. You can't agree with everything I say. I try not to be agreeable. So have a great night. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to be honest.